Good evening, everyone, and welcome to DIA's Readings in Contemporary Poetry series. My name is Megan Whitco, and I'm an assistant curator here at DIA, and it's my great pleasure to welcome everyone to tonight's reading. I am also very pleased to welcome our two poets for this evening's program. We have Patricia Spears Jones and Christopher Stackhouse. Yay! Thank you both for joining us tonight and for so generously agreeing to be a part of this series. I also want to extend a very heartfelt thank you to Dominique Levy Gallery, who provides major support for readings in contemporary poetry. Additional support is provided with public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, as well as our media sponsor, the Brooklyn Rail. And we also want to thank the Brooklyn Brewery for the complimentary cold beverages that we're all enjoying tonight. And lastly, we are deeply appreciative of the assistance from all of DIA's staff in coordinating this series, and particularly Francesca, Max, Maria, and Mary Catherine. So I think I see some regular faces here tonight, but in case anybody's not a regular, a brief outline of events. So following the first reader, we'll have a brief 10-minute intermission. You're welcome to grab another drink, socialize, or purchase a book by either of our poets. We have those for sale. And then following our intermission, we resume with the second speaker of the evening. So without any further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Vincent Katz, who curates readings in contemporary poetry at DIA, and he will be introducing our first reader for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you all for coming out tonight for this, what I'm sure will be a great reading. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Christopher Stackhouse. Christopher Stackhouse is a critic, poet, and teacher based in New York. He's the co-author of Seismosis, published in 2006, which features line drawings by Stackhouse with text by writer and translator John Keene. His most recent volume of poems, Plural, was published by Counterpath Press in 2012, and he is the author of the chapbook Slip. Stackhouse's poems, essays, interviews, and reviews have been published in literary journals and arts periodicals, including Modern Painters, Art in America, and the Brooklyn Rail. His writing has also appeared in the journals EOG, Octopus Magazine, Aufgabe, Hambone, The Volta, Reverie, Midwest African American Literature, American Poet, and Make, a literary magazine. Stackhouse is a contributing editor at Fence and Bomb magazines. Formal concerns mark Christopher Stackhouse's engagement with the art of poetry. One of his most signal achievements, formally, is a densely packed poem in 8 longish lines. Like sculptures, these poems lie there on the floor, as it were, full of condensed energy and also indestructible. It was Basil Bunting who reminded Ezra Pound by, quote, fumbling about with a German-Italian dictionary, in Pound's words, that dichten equals condensare. In other words, one of poetry's jobs is to do away with the unnecessary, to condense. Oftentimes, the foliage is so dense, the best approach is to let it waft over you and feel the shifts wherever they hit you. The poems can be parsed at leisure, but their compactness assures that any one parsing will never be definitive. When I read the lines, quote, feeling is pavement, thought seems some register above it, a black ocean, smart leagues of comfort, how it is, the girls love the girls, the boys the boys. In Stackhouse's poem, Convention, the first image I get is of a neighborhood in which white faces are minimal to non-existent, the comfortable feeling there. And the first image of love is erotic. On a second read, though, the black ocean becomes the sky, and thought is up there, not down on the pavement. And the love is the love of friendship. As meanings shift in Stackhouse's poems, stability, such as it is found in the shifting. and also in the dedication to poetry and also to people and to life. There are a lot of different forms in Stackhouse's book, plural, hence the title. Tonight, I present you the multiform Christopher Stackhouse. Please join me in giving him a warm welcome.
That made me smile. Yeah. Thanks, Vincent. It's a pleasure to be here at DIA. I remember maybe 10 or 12 years ago when DIA was they had the reading series, and I think it was still a series then, but it was across the street in a bigger space, and August Kleinzahler and Harriet Mullen read. And I said to myself, I wonder how long it'll take me to get invited to read at DIA at over a decade. So that's about how long it takes to write a poem. Without talking too much more, before reading poems, I want to read some poems. I'll bounce around from plural to two new collections that I'm working on, and we'll go from there. Raphael Rubinstein is here, and he's a good friend. And I wrote this poem at an Arthur Danto lecture at the Guggenheim. The poem is called Arthur Danto at the Guggenheim Lecture Notes, November 11, 2003. So I want to read it in part because of that. And then the other reason is, some of you might know, I work part-time at a wine shop, really beautiful wine shop, called Heights Chateau in Brooklyn Heights, and some of my colleagues are here. And this poem starts out with a series of quotes where Danto starts to compare wine to art. And at the time, he was talking about two kinds of wine that I really enjoy. And so I thought I would read this poem because there's two different parts of the world came together 13 years ago. Arthur Danto at the Guggenheim Lecture Notes, November 11, 2003. Comparison, Sancerre, or Puy Fumé, etc. Comparison between Bryce Martin's, quotation mark, and Joan Mitchell's Hemlock. I should qualify this. I misheard Danto saying Raphael's name, so when you hear the Rubinstein, it's really Raphael, but I wrote it down. You'll see. Again, comparison, Sancerre, or Puy Fumé, etc. Comparison between Bryce Martin's, question mark, and Joan Mitchell's Hemlock. Arthur Rubinstein, poet, art critic. Value judgments, muted values, color reference, means. Joan Mitchell's Hemlock, 1952. Tom Wasserman, pop artist, contemporary of Warhol, visual thinking versus the eye as new, as old, struggle tension, caught in the fly bottle, Wittgenstein, Gnaw, Piece by Janine Antoni, symbolic enactment, vitrines, plain, pliant thinking about inference, salient parts of a form, iterative works, visual versus intellectual interests, visual versus philosophical interests, claim to the status of art, philosophical inclined art critic, Leon Polk Smith, artist, James Harvey, graphic designer of the Brillo box, was an up-and-coming abstract painter in the 50s. Warhol's show at Bonwit Teller, 1961. Warhol's first one-person show, a storefront on 57th Street. Norwegian artist Dahl. Shireen Nishat's film Rapture. To deploy, an allegory of obscure but inescapable meaning. Direct Danto quotes. I think things that look alike almost never mean the same thing in art. More lines for poem, essay mine. Throwing darts, the freeze, preeminent thinker, here's a dart, let's toss off a few. Unlike me, you are not restless, how context apologizes for where aesthetics fail. Living your life is killing yourself slowly. The central freeze, the cultural freeze. Artists, Spencer Finch, Lawrence Weiner. See Painters on Painting with Warhol, Rauschenberg, Johns, Naumann, etc. Quote, "The state of boundary is only interesting on a tightrope." Approximate quote from Andre Gide. Rosenberg versus Greenberg. How about iceberg lettuce? I haven't read this poem in a long time, and I've read it many times, but since it was here, I'm going to read it again. Untitled for John Cage. Chance operations, John Cage, based on the question, John Cage, coming from the nature of John Cage, because it gives me a certain kind of confidence, because they're not a normal kind of brush, John Cage. I enjoy seeing a mark that hasn't been fiddled with, John Cage. Let's jump to, well, actually, before I do that, Raphael and I were just talking about walking, the idea of walking and writing. And then there's two poems I want to read from, that I just thought about doing, from walking in my neighborhood in Park Slope. This poem is about 9 years old, also in plural, and it's called Each Bird. Where there is foot traffic, there is industry. Where there once was murder, pairs of lovely legs made love, yes, love again and to come in the grass. By this thought, I am dizzy, staring at the swaying shadow of leaves. Branches blurred, flat, furry, patterning arrhythmically on the pavement. Each bird is this poem's color against, no, with the asphalt between the white stripes wherein strollers cavort, fertile, intrepid, antique, soft with age, browning beneath the blaze, refracting daylight. Here I am beaten by the swish a favorite sundress delivers, the lash, chased by humor of children in the park where I played ball with my brother on Memorial Day. The same park where I tossed a frisbee with students, a librarian, a painter, a Brazilian woman, a close friend of a young philosopher headed to teach in Lyon. These thoughts, each a person in their own, make me think about the beer we drank, both times, after the park, at the bar, on the patio. This page may as well be a wet napkin, the t-shirt full of breasts, and the glare from a projection, its hiss and click, flash smiles, the grimace. My head is tilted the direction of the slope, as if it wants to be parallel to it, as if it wants to gravitate toward the lead, still debating beauty, as if to prove something fast, futile, how death doesn't defeat love, how love sort of floats, how love is decadent, ignorant about the flashing hand at the crosswalk, incipient, orange, as in a contemporary poem, the kind of literature which fails before someone, something shapely wanting, here, born on the street, litter, litany, final, absolute, always there, disappearing, an old woman, dark as coal. Gray hair, pupils clouding, mouth pursed proud. She carries 4 black plastic bags, each filled with plastic bottles, with the other hand full of a handlebar to a cart she pushes. The black bag's handles impress upon the skin of her forearm. Her sense of gravity must be different than mine. And yet, here we are in this neighborhood together, passing as people all over the world pass each other by sandal, by luxury car. We'll jump to some new poems. newer poems. I'm going to read the one that Vincent mentioned, which I like a lot. And I wrote it in a bar in Berlin with friends and staring into the blackness through a plate glass window. And there was like lots of people making out and having fun. And there were girls making out with girls and boys making out with boys and every combination you could imagine in between. What's that? What'd you say? Yeah. It was built for me. Yeah. Convention. And there's a little slight irony in the title, Convention, because there was nothing conventional about it. But convention. A motionless warp of damaged light tossing back from the background, listener rocking to the rumble of traffic through glass divisions. Feeling is pavement. Thought seems some register above it, a black ocean, smart leagues of comfort. How it is the girls love the girls, the boys, whatever between them, some song or another, like marriage or the forest, we think disappearing, like the invention of plastic or its ubiquity. One power or another, the style variation, to make music no matter what the pure height of a tall glass of beer or the parallels of her pleated dress might say. This poem was written, and it's in a collection done by Sam Truitt and I forget the press now, the big anthology on poets from the Midwest. This is one of the poems I put in that anthology, and it was written in the Hudson Valley, just outside of Chatham, hanging out with the painter Peter Atchison. Just like took a snapshot of our walk. Soft as a melting crayon. Soft as a melting crayon, describe the color if you can. Two small foxes congress in perfunctory joy. At this hour in the white sky, a raptor floating in concentric circles quiets the air. Everything is by itself, yet dendriform. Imagination in her plastic hour finishes us stereotypically. Absorption in relief suffocates, enlivens, destroys, and frees things. Pick any music you wish to set your mouth ablaze. There is likeness, converse to actual pain, all animals of earth mouthing it simultaneously. Ocean, forest, desert plains, foothills of a once unnamed place contain connecting points destined to splatter into lyric and food. All of you here, but who exactly, to what devoted, march forward? I think this should do it here. So here's another kind of prose poem, as in the style of the last poem. And the title is just, Sometimes You Think Things Are Lost. And I sat at my desk and had to write a poem and wrote one. This is it. Sometimes you think things are lost, and they are not, like the Japanese convertible with a song on the radio. You can name the song. At the mention of its title, you remember the smallest thing. Phonutria, startled by a sudden gust of wind. It is hard to be yourself when the many subjects that build your skin fall apart under scrutiny. You stare off. If nature did it, or you recall it raining, and the wafting smell of sky water softening the surface of a newly poured asphalt road. This disappears. The shirtless decorations of inexperience in past and future fill you. It is a cautious table. You try to tell you this from the shadow of compromise without rigor, talismans, or legal document. We could then be faceful into a heaping plate of you to end or start with before blaming lack of reference. You need an image, so you tell yourself. Without an image, you will disappear, be lost, caught on a whim, circling, as if you never have before. What is it again, the ticket, the love life, the stellar novel, that you are beautiful? I can't remember. And this is a long, ongoing series of poems that I wanted to read tonight, in part because I think it kind of suits the institutional space in some ways, but it has nothing to do with that. It's called In Parts, and it's ongoing, and I think I have like, I don't know, 7 or 8 here, something like that. And they're repetitive, and one of the things that they do is they try to put a little pressure on the word and the word's capacities and incapacities to adequately represent. And so there's that. And then there are other layers around mortality and desire and sex and breathing and just being. And they're all octets, 8-line poems, 8-line stanzas. The poem is ongoing. This radical disintegration of parts, squeals, gesture, erasure, assertive, tearing away or open a hole in the scene, the grid everybody sees, to be vulgar, mass and volume, flesh is modular, peeling back themselves, reduced to an immense silence, a thick mucus in the throat, proxy for pedigree, all pleasure being equal. You are not supposed to look good if you have desire. The best guess trapped beneath surface tension, cursive against cursive, seminal in the plain air, crossfade, taxi, unmade, stretched, contractible, catching light in the pass, staving dissension, becoming apart, what seems to be nothing, this is what happens. This radical disintegration of parts, squeals, gesture, erasure, assertive, tearing away or open a hole in the scene, the grid everybody sees, to be vulgar, mass and volume, flesh is modular, peeling back themselves, reduced to a thick mucus in the throat, proxy for pedigree, becoming apart, all pleasure being equal. You are not supposed to look good if you have desire, X, or face in a bubble, or nosing in on its contour, turning away from nothing, the best guess trapped beneath surface tension, cursive against cursive, seminal in the plain air, crossfade, taxi, unmade, stretched, contractible, catching light in the pass. This radical tearing away of part, squeals, gesture, erasure, assertive, opening a hole in the scene, the grid everybody sees, or becoming a part of all pleasure being equal. You are not supposed to look good if you have nothing, desire, X, or face in a bubble, or nosing in on its contour, turning away from the best guess trapped beneath. Cursive against cursive, piper blow hard in the plain air, crossfade, taxi, unmade, stretched, contractible, tension catching light through the wreck, approximate, devilish, burgundy, pressed to function, throat, instrumental to itself, in the and serial. X, or face in a bubble, or nosing in on its contour, V-shaped, pointing from to the best guess, trapped beneath surface tension, seminal to be vulgar. Mass and volume, flesh is modular, peeling back themselves, tearing away or open a hole in the scene. The grid everybody sees, reduced to a thick mucus in the throat. Proxy for pedigree, becoming a part, all pleasure being equal. You are not supposed to look good if you have desire, vicinal in the plain air, crossfade, taxi, unmade, stretched, contractible, catching light through the wreck, instrumental to itself in the and serial. In the plain air, crossfade, taxi, unmade, stretched, contractible, catching light through the wreck, bursting surface, pus left in the V-shape, your excellence for the time being, forget about moving forward. It tastes, it's been real, by it matters, all pleasure being equal mass and volume. Flesh is modular, instrumental to itself, nosing in on its contour, cursive against cursive, turning away from trapped beneath, peeling back, next left open a hole in the grid everybody sees, reduced to a thick mucus, an immense silence, torn from field, lost detail, dispatched, lone trace for seconds, caught intact. This is what happens in the plain air, stretched, contractible, catching light through the wreck, bursting surface, trapped beneath another face, unmade, pus left in your form. Your excellence, all pleasure being equal, its contour torn from field, instrumental to itself, becoming distinction, reduced to throat. What seems to be open, alone, fill in, pause, service, condition, nosing in on, desire, lost detail, dispatched for seconds, returned in grammar, tensions bow into curve, flesh on paper, cursive against cursive, needle to square, lean, vital, read into parenthesis, etymon, further, what you want, more than want. To be vulgar, mass and volume, throat, flesh, open, alone, catching light, bow into cursive, read into parentheses, bursting in plain air, your form, trapped beneath its contour, becoming distinction, seed square into circle, all pleasure being apparition, instrumental to itself in part, score, corrections, thinking off, flesh on paper, desire, lost on surface, vital, chained, turning, circa, removed, evenly brooked all by myself, recessed, looks back undertone, what seems to be left, service condition, paragraph, crystal against cursive, indexed enough, perfectly soft when born. Lost on surface, circa, opening, read into parentheses, throat, flesh, catching light, bow into cursive, trapped beneath contour, or bursting in plain air, your form, instrumental to itself, all pleasure being equal, desire becoming distinction, thinking off, square into circle, your field, reduced to paragraph, mass and volume for taste, what seems to be left, evenly recessed, undertone, indexed enough, will serve as condition. It matters in part, removed, replaced intact, torn from sketch, modular, sky-shaped apparition, turning away from the wreck, or face, or X. And then the last poem I want to read is a poem called Snow Fountain, which was published in the Brooklyn Rail by Anselm Berrigan last year. Snow Fountain. To last image remembered, to be each other as possible form, each other undone like a season in possession of this tubular milk. Sleet in summer, all of a sudden, We, flock of starlings losing themselves, capturing the fall, droplet particulars in the rapids, the stone gray silence, set in black violet, heaven's privacy, everyone watches. Our star wants and wants again. Our star disappears into the big death repertoire. Borders of the world are pure imagination. A prosaic science on the infinite arc. Faith pours, immortal water too, made known to I, sweet bird of youth. This moment erupts, chokes, drips like inspiration, air leaves, there poised in ventilation, looking back over letters next to each other, spectacle of birth, gift of subject, waxing gibbous at noon. Between gold curtains, room full of purpose, sky breaks, gasping in the split, everything earned, then lost, as if tuned right to balance whatever will emerge without touch, a miracle, an eyrie above field, a crown of rain, simple daylight, under length, turning remnant, further into gaping source, gift perceived, extremities to breach, upon launch, metropolis, earth skin into sun company, lights off the backhanded sweetness in corners, scraped harmonies, lights on the closeness made from nothing to prize. It insists in our hands, brood of all fear, bottomless, long enough toward visual noise, pushed silent movement, easing function, that forgetting to orient the dark red absence beneath the eyelids held shut for seconds, then witness it, breaking open or pull apart or fail specifics in the edit between the neon. Thank you.
Arkansas, born and raised, resident of New York City for more than 4 decades, as it says on her website. Patricia Spears Jones is a poet, playwright, and literary curator who lives and works in New York. She's the author of the poetry collections The Weather That Kills, Femme du Monde, Painkiller, 5 chapbooks, including Living in the Love Economy, published in 2014, and 2 plays commissioned and produced by Mabou Mines. Her 4th poetry collection, A Lucent Fire, New and Selected Poems, is out from White Pine Press and features her 2016 Pushcart Prize-winning poem, Etta James at the Audubon Ballroom. At last. She is a contributing editor at Bomb Magazine and a fellow emeritus at the Black Earth Institute in Wisconsin. She is the editor of The Future Differently Imagined, an issue of About Place Journal, the online publication of Black Earth Institute. And she has been the editor and contributor to a number of blog projects, including one that has a great title, Think, Poems for Aretha Franklin's Inauguration Day Hat, which you may remember. And that can be found at Bomb's website, which is bombsite.org. She's also the co-editor of the long out-of-print, groundbreaking anthology Ordinary Women, an anthology of poetry by New York City women, published in 1978. And she published WB No. 1, a Mimeo magazine that included works by Lee Breuer, Larry Eigner, Bill Kushner, Ted Greenwald, and others. In a poem beginning with a line by Neruda, Patricia Spears Jones compares sugar and salt, both white, and concludes they cannot build a tower. Salt and pepper, however, can. Quote, salt and pepper are masons building the perfect blank, end of quote. What they build is mysterious and yet crystal clear, quote, white on white walls thick, whole cities surrounded with lustrous black roadways, end of quote. The black is lustrous, but it is outside, surrounding the white walls of the cities. But the black forms roadways, paths of communication, while the white is dedicated to barriers, protections, separations. Jones's poetry often works like this, quietly, gently, with a careful attention to placement and sound. Elsewhere, Jones can be more freewheeling, even raucously narrative, as in Encounter and Farewell, a poem from her most recent collection. Quote, "It's all foreplay, really, this walk." And she goes on to describe in loving detail an ode to New Orleans' French Quarter. You wonder, foreplay to what? The term seems somehow metaphorical. No, it turns out it's foreplay for real, as the poem shifts into lust with tips from Professor Longhair until finally, boom, she and her unnamed companion are doing it. And that has its own several levels of epiphanies. There's no sentimentality here or anywhere in Jones's poetry, but there is recognition of the passing of time and people. And there are inserted, as here, odes to women, black women, acknowledgement of the direness of fate that music can alleviate. Quote, "Their voices sweeten the snaking air." Jones takes her particular poetic intelligence on a variety of rides, to Paris, the West, and to the secluded reaches of the heart, which she makes apparent. "Sadness is so private," she writes, "but I won't become invisible." Tonight, she's visible and audible, and we are the beneficiaries. Please join me in welcoming Patricia Spears Jones.
Hot damn. That's the kind of introduction you want to get. It's sort of like, every once in a while, and I know Chris probably feels like this too, every poet in the world wants to be like that guy, have the guy from like James Brown who's like, the heart is working, in showbiz, boom, and you're like, yeah, okay. I am not the hardest, I'm the second hardest working in Poe biz. But I am so thrilled to be here at DIA, and it took 10 years, I was more like about 7 or 8, but that's okay. Anyway, so, no, this is a wonderful series, and the last time I was here, I heard Kimberly Lyons read, and she smoked the joint. It was like amazing. So, and thank you, Chris, that was wonderful. And I love that poem about Park Slope. So I'm going to read poems about Bed-Stuy. So, Brooklyn is in the house, yeah. I'm sorry. We live in Brooklyn, not Brooklyn the brand, okay? It feels like that sometimes. You just have to fight it. But I'm going to start, I'm going to do a little chronological, and then I'm going to shift a bit. So, A Lucent Fire is new and selected poems, and it basically covers, 4 decades of writing. And there are a number of poems that I would love to read, but I'm going to read the last 2 that are from The Weather That Kills, and then move into new stuff. What the God of Fire Charged Me, which has a epigram by the Nicaraguan poet Ana Ilse, in Spanish, Pagué lo que el Dios de Fuego me cobró. Each turn is the one that mocks the old order, and when the revolution happens, another readies itself, like the surge of blood in spring, or the lost hope of a winter where kisses were too few or too many. You will say, she's romantic, and you will be correct, but one dimension is only one dimension. The others remain unseen. Be wary. When the night watch ends and the sun rises, a smile on land and water, I worry less about the dreams I cannot suppress, but more about the life I am so willing to live. One turn, then the other, a fire walk as prelude, a dance best forgiven. Then New Blues. And this is for everybody in here in this audience who's had to slog it out for an MFA. Hey, I got mine. In bolder times, I'd be knee-deep in trouble, kissing the brow of some dark-skinned dream of a man or floating off the blasted brass in a smoky loft draped in silk-smooth cotton. But it's midnight in Dorchester, and Robert Cray emphatically sings about wanting no more of whatever was there before the song had to be sung. It's a sad song, funny too. Hellhounds chase Robert Johnson from one end of the Delta to the other, but this singer's problem is much more local. He just wants his lover to move out. Property is the new devil who owns the lease gets to live and sing about it. Yes, the blues changes. Talk like economics or post-war poetry, fussed over like a cranky aunt with money to leave behind. A music and serious, this robust American tradition, the blues and its borders. In the movies, it gets very, very odd. See The Birth of the Blues, in which Bing Crosby and the boys create Dixieland jazz and take it from New Orleans to Chicago. Eddie Rochester Anderson is there to add a note of authenticity. And Mary Martin is the chick singer. It's a strange movie. The journey is drenched in glorious moonlight in front of black and white mats designed by somebody German, probably, as the boys, all white, mind you, except dear Rochester, cheerfully play and fight. Darkies on the shore pick cotton, drink corn liquor, get lynched, and add to the exotic atmosphere. A lone curl of smoke rises from a shack's miserable chimney. Rochester wields his broom like a bayonet as he escorts Miss Martin across the bridge between comic relief and the lonesome, heartless voice of a bluesman conjuring revenge. After that, I ask, is there room for such cinematic loss in the new blues? Where are those hellhounds, loose ends, women, whiskey bottle gone dry, the sheriff from the next county coming to yours, that slapped kick in the groin after midnight and before the wolf's sad hour? The pawn shops of memory are closed now, and some women refuse to slice one more cheek over the last good-time man. What to do? When the last train whistle rasps, and only the jet's sonic boom dazzles, will the drum kit slit the air and the saxophone bend down so low someone checks their back pockets as the guitar strip away one more story, the one about the man and the woman, the one about standing at the bridge, the one told on the mockingbird's tongue in a voice that scrapes the geologic layers of modern times as if it could reveal the origins of the race. But this morning, Cray's voice crawls off the phonograph, a snake hungry for the future, and I make one more cup of coffee, read critical theory, then start to follow the slithering line from ear to heart, then back to the clock against the wall. All right, I am from Arkansas, so here's Hope, Arkansas, 1970. Somehow, this feels prescient for today. You'll see why. Hope, Arkansas, 1970. A wealthy white man drives up to the Golden Arches, Texas plates. It's a Mercedes sedan, luxuriously glistening, and from the passenger side emerges a blonde child, made up, tarted up, as a Brit would say. We were freshman girls on our way to our sweet mate's wedding, starting out from Memphis, the Mississippi whipping up currents. We crossed Arkansas from east to west, Dallas our destination. We sung silly songs to curb Nancy's fear of crossing bridges, to a smiling hatred of girls singing off-key raucously. It worked, we're here, but Who is this man to this child? Father, lover, dirty old uncle? We put down our milkshakes, sandwiches, and fries. The little blonde chatters away. The man strokes her hand. The girls we are become womanly, matronly. We want to rescue this child, but where would we take her, and what would happen to all that money? Ghost is the only poem of mine that's ever been in Best American Poetry. Thank you, read it up. Ghost. He was filled with beauty, so filled he could not stop the shadows from their walk around his horn, blasting cobwebs in the Fillmore ceiling. Somewhere dawn makes up for the night before, but he is floating, dead in the water. And yet, my lover tells me, he saw him shimmering, as did others. It could have been the acid or fragmented harmonics, his reed ancestral, this perilous knowledge. The band went home, shivering. A girl threw roses in the water, carnations, daisies, and bright red sashes like ones the Chinese use for funeral banners. A drummer intoned chants from the Orient. Police wrote up the news. Years later, my lover told me, friends would hear the whisper, then a tone full throttle from the wind, ghost on 2nd Avenue, jasmine in the falling stars. If you catch one, your hands will glitter. Now we're on West 22nd Street, right? And Comme des Garçons is on West 22nd Street, but I don't like this Comme des Garçons. I like the other Comme des Garçons, the one that used to be in Soho. I love that store. And here is why. Comme des Garçons. The Italians really know how to do red. Now it is the Japanese. Poised on poured concrete, this vivid scarlet, expensively, carefully cut harlot, silk as parachute. A midnight purple velvet brushes the hand, cat-like, as if in conversation with the silk. Persian versus Siamese. A chaste white slitters the length of mannequins, oddly shaped as if female form is an afterthought. Under the stern lights, suave white floats a line of solitude, crystalline as first snowfall, forgetful of the swift human charge that takes to pulling threads from the elaborately disguised seams, splatters white water, scars every attempt at human perfection. Like this green jacket suddenly male. Will the actor buy it? Will it work for all the other boys? Ascending the brutal staircases towards chaste white and harlot red, lipstick luscious, what matters if the forms dematerialize, leaving sex, solitude, and the frank shapes for credit of contemplation. Elsewhere, all is feline. And I really ripped that off from Garland Jeffries, because he has a great line that says, New York skyline, female, feminine, feline. Okay. Yay. Okay. I don't know if you know the work of Beverly Buchanan. Okay. Well, this is a poem that's based on kind of seeing some of her pieces a few years ago. Shack with Vines. Who lives in this motley house? Some old woman left back of the bottom of the county. She's crazy. No, she's poor. She makes her taste of something as bitter as the broad leaves choking the last life from her house. Did she go to church each Sunday, pull the yellow streamers during the maypole dance, learn the first 4 chapters of Genesis by the age of 9? Where is her family? Or was there not a family? Did she nurse the folk of the county? Is this the conjure woman so talked about? Or is the resident of this dying house male? Shotgun at his bedside, ready to blast aside the wicked? This is his sanctuary, this little house, away from the highway, far outside of town, far from the many temptations of the flesh about which he reads repeatedly in weekday life? Or are there orphan children sleeping beneath blankets, coats, whatever warmth was left behind? They remember electricity, hot showers, macaroni and cheese. Scavengers in the town, their t-shirts, old jeans, and itchy, unwashed sweaters contour skinny backs. There they are outside the local fast food drive-in, sifting through the cast-off bread and meat. Laughter tossed over the bin like an accentuant anecdote. Shack collapsing. And it's All Saints' Day. Diamanda Gallus screams, sings, rage upon love as winter forms drop by cooling drop. And earlier in that year, spring in the Blue Ridge, pastures and hills bejeweled with violets, dogwoods, the Judas tree, softens the bitter taste of recipes for worming, for worry, for the death of masters, overseers, the uniformed patriarchs of a history astonished by defeat. The burned mansions and moth-ridden grief come back to haunt lanes to the left and the right, a clear divide between the black side and the white. On All Saints' Day, a wind resurrected as dervish spiraling dry, sharp leaves, righteous fuels for bonfires, honorable music to comfort the dead. And I wrote that after I actually went to my very first ever artist residency. I got to go to a fellowship at the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, and people were sitting around saying, there used to be this mansion, but then it burned down. And I was like, really? That's great. Okay. Then they had to build a really nice place for everybody. All right. I'm going to read something I usually don't read, but there are, in my second book, Femme de Monde, there's 2 elegies, because I literally went to 2 funerals in April of 1994. One was for Ron Botter, and the other was for Linda Hull. This is the one for Ron Botter, because to me, he always represents New York City. April 1994, 2 deaths, 2 wakes, 2 open caskets, Ron Botter. I would have had quite a time reviewing your wake. It was entertaining, dramatically planned, flowers, white flowers in vases, pots, everywhere the eye could rest, the anteroom perfumed by blooming whiteness, flowers for a man full of mad love for his generation's masculine beauty, militantly muscled and shrunk down slow. You were laid out in your, quote, Roy Cohn costume, that jacket's deep velvet plushness contrasting with the stiff whiteness of the satin tufts of the casket's lining. You wore Roy Cohn makeup, which made you look older, the age you'd have liked to reach had you not had AIDS, had your heart not stopped in a beautiful place in Italy. Too soon, too soon. You knew the seriousness of the joke, pratfalls you could do, but what was better was the right gesture. This is true. The swinging penis dance. Anybody who went to see the Wooster Group would know this. The swinging penis dance in Frank Dale, the loopy voice in Three Sisters, the prim and proper lecturer in Route 1 and 9. Who could fault such fault-free performances? Critics and enemies alike enjoyed your quest for that moment when the joke worked, the gesture transformed the actor, the audience let go of theory and swooned or laughed. In one of the miserable years I lived in Boston, the Wooster Group brought downtown Manhattan to Cambridge. At the Captain's Bar in a downtown Sheridan, you were outrageously flirting as you were wont to do with all God's creatures. Your voice, a deep, untroubled instrument soaked gently in bourbon, or was it one of those sweet liqueurs that made everybody else's tongue shriek? You dared me to try a dry martini, and of course I did. And there again, you twinkled, try too. And we talked about what? Poetry, theater, Reagan, Bush, an era of foul weather and Wall Street wizards. You were as handsome as the guy in the IBM print ad. But then you were the guy in the IBM print ad. There was so much laughter. Friends at the barricade or on bar stools, charmed by that twinkle. I wish I could do this memory better. It was not that long ago, not that many days between a winter in Boston brutal and a spring in Manhattan lovely sweet, where one friend's death left me scattered somewhat, a story here, a color there. Greg and you hosting a liquid Christmas party on Bleecker Street, somewhat frantic and cheerful as if awash, part brandy, part beer. You dressed like a 30s movie star, George Brent. You were doing George Brent. Stylish, suave, cocktails at the ready, and you were happy with new work, pleased to have Gary, Indiana, set a piece about Roy Coyne for you, just for you. You showed us this green velvet tuxedo, a green almost black, the plush velvet fabric camouflaged, the jacket's severe tailoring, a perfect costume, elegant, yet just a hint of the parvenu, Roy Coyne on the bias. There was laughter, an urgent kind of laughter, some presentiment, warriors in the desert, the death of friends, the coarse understanding of death, too soon, too young, too soon. But that laughter, it kept rising near the Christmas tree, by the refrigerator, just outside the door. Peace, there was no peace. For what it's worth, you are the only actor to have made me weep. It was a moment in Jack Smith, where Smith pushes back the elaborate fake Arab headgear, mascara smearing so slowly that decades fade away, having exhaled an aria on the greatness of Lola Montez. There was a stop from exhaustion, anger, distraction, what? Jack Smith's 7 veils parted and swayed as if in a silly dream, and you leaned away from us, transfixed by a spotlight or an insect. How tawdry run, and oh so beautiful. Okay. So for all of you who ever saw Ron Vaughter perform, you know he was the guy. All right, a few new poems, because you know, that's what you do when you come to places like DIA. You read new poems like, you know, Chris did. He has a whole manuscript. I just got some new fucking poems here. All right, one of the great joys of this year was I got to go to Squaw Valley where I was a teacher, and I got to hear all kinds of wonderful students. And one of them is, he's Hmong, and he had written, his poem for the first day was kind of like an incantation. And I tend not to like that kind of stuff, but you know, for some reason in the mountains, you let go of all kinds of shit. So, yeah, we need blessings. So here it goes, a blessing, a question. And if you've ever been to the Sierra Nevadas, you'll get this. All right. A blessing, a question. Today, a poet makes a blessing on the poets, the mountain, temple bells, the aspen ringing. Athletic white people carry coffee cups or sports gear. Their boys gleefully play in many hockey rinks. Is it bliss to not think about money? The accountant's plans followed the foregone tax burden, but there are burdens. Many shop clerks at the markets are young, pretty women. They know that everything is overpriced. They ring up purchases and smile their knowledge. Here are the ones for whom abundance is ever present. An indifference to the lift operators, landscapers, housekeepers, truck drivers, those sales clerks, is as noisy as the aspen's trebling song. Yes, we poets are here and walking through noting Swiss-like architecture, not the happiest place on earth. Another miniature attempt at contentment, this time for the sports inclined. Let them hit hockey pucks or eat quinoa wraps or quinoa, however you say that. Or soothe muscles with a nouvelle vague massage. These are days of lavish disregard and anxious cowardice, with sorrow's plenty and love's grand array fanning the crimson blossoms at the bottom of the ocean. Who in the faux Swiss village will ever dive that far? All right, here's my Prince poem. I have another Prince poem, but I didn't bring that one. So this is the one after he died. Okay. This is called Prince on Prairie Home Companion and Invention. Okay? Don't be, Prince would like this because, he was from Minnesota. He would. I'm convinced of it. Here we go. After the song about buttermilk biscuits, or a horse named Buttermilk, the eye-shadowed one emerges in a cloud of streamers, purple and gold. He sits before the baby grand. A wan smile crosses his heart-shaped face. And then he sings an old hymn, I'll Fly Away, or is it The Beautiful River? Garrison Keillor joins in for some tremulous harmony, and the audience sits hushed and bothered, their faith exalted. An ecstatic chorus ends. Then Keillor tries for some banter, but once the piano keys are no longer struck, up stands this tiny regal man. He gives a slight bow to his host, to the audience, and then departs. An odd commercial follows for faux shampoo or power tools. Who can remember? The streamers crisscross the stage until the janitors broom them away. And golden glitter streaks streaks on the piano keys, while Keillor's tears are not seen. He knows another man of the plains has left his mark. Those chords, his voice, mascara in the green room. And I'm going to read this because when this was posted last year on the Academy, the poets.org, I got more stuff. I got more people really liked this poem. I was like stunned. Okay, Dancer. The man with the black feather tattoo pairs the space between fantasy and the memory of a man's carved torso, designed for stroking and celebration. Today, the sun's brightness is like that lover's kiss, wonderful in the present and greater in memory. A memory that brings me back to that black feather's flutter. Stars dazzle in some other part of this world where the sun has set and the moon illuminates swans diving into voluminous waters. I'm telling you, people love that poem. I did too. I like the guy with the black feather. Well, anyway, I saw him. I didn't get to love him, but boy, I would have if I had a chance. Here's one more, a couple of more, and then I'll be done. This has been a very difficult year for a lot of people, and we cannot not note that. So I'll end with a kind of poem that speaks to that, but before I do, just one more that sort of is in conversation with another poet. And I also will read that one poem from Neruda, which I was supposed to do, and I forgot to do it. I apologize. Where is it? Get up off of that thing. Okay. Here we go. This is from Painkiller, and Painkiller is the book that I wrote out. Most of the poems were written after 9/11, not all of them, but most of them. But I love Pablo Neruda's preguntas. I love his questions. And so I wrote a book called Respuestas, which answers some of those questions. And one of the questions is, ¿Trabajan las orillas azúcar, construyendo una torre blanca? Do salt and sugar work to build a white tower? All right. No, they do not speak to each other. Salt and pepper are masons building the perfect blank, a beautiful stark. White on white walls, thick, whole cities surrounded with lustrous black roadways, jewel paths daunt. It is curiosity, Senor Neruda, that forms the white foundations that rise platform after platform, floor by floor into air. Tower as lookout, what is seen, the enemy approaching, or Lot's wife dissolving, myth and punishment, elevator and aperture, the eye apparent. But where are their tools put aside for dazzle? 2. Sugar tastes like sex, surprise, salt and pepper become sun and water, or lobby and floor. Oh, those white towers spiced with story, precarious, platform after platform, floor by floor, falling into ruin, reverie, blanco, negro, mustard, sienna, and beryl. And do you know how hard it is to find a one word that is a blue? Beryl. That took a while. I love that. Now, September song. And then the last one. Here is what returned. Now remains the Art Deco portals of the Church Street post office, still efficient in its marble and metal, how it shills citizens as tourists look up and down for the World Trade Center. The World Trade Center is not here. The World Trade Center spread dust and rubble 15 years ago on a day that looked like yesterday, when the air's breath was sharp and cool as metal. There are nuns in white habits walking about Trinity's churchyard, where the wealthy settlers settled their bones. Across the street, 2 slender blonde models pose in front of the Millennium Hotel, another slice of New York life. There's this huge white whale skeleton claiming to be a transportation hub. But of course, wasn't the Pequod a ship in search of disaster? That could be a guess, a gem, a gin with potions none are of any use. New Yorkers are here on a Tuesday working the post office, classrooms technical, classrooms normal, banks, bars, gyms and spas, saloons, law firms, real estate development offices above cellars of cheap postcards with a newly spired One World Center, formerly Freedom Tower, or the 2 buildings ridiculed as banal. How much fun we once had ridiculing the twinness of the towers. But then again, when friends dined or danced at the top, they were whipsawed by the grandeur of sky and water, New York Harbor, above it all, as if all was this one island among many to be above. To have been brought down and become a whole so vast, it composed an odd melody, backhoes, boots, trucks, winches, the sobbing of friends, lovers, family, a concerto of farewells as the gray black mounds by barge are moved to fresh kills. But we are busy now and put upon by these tourists angling to see the twinness not there, selfies making. Then off they go to buy stuff to take back to Wisconsin or Hong Kong or Copenhagen. While we quest by crisscrossing the transportation hub, shiny and humming videos, LEDs, not far from where Melville had his version of a 9 to 5. Did he have to wear a special suit? Our few dollars or a quick swipe at purveyors of bland baked goods with harsh coffee. we know how to take the bitter with the sweet. And the last poem is a collaboration that I did with the poet Marilyn Callett. She wanted to do something more, whatever. Speaking Sparks. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do another one of the damn poems, but here we go. Speaking Sparks. Repeating news of police violence beats back poetry. The video feed fed well, digital drama loops. Myriad spirits trapped in pixels, their death's tapestry, the star sky. On audio, too many curses stuck on fuck, fuck, fuck. When my daughter cries, Mommy, you told me not to say that, I reassure her, honey, my mouth is free. In our house, we speak sparks. If we need spot fire, watch yourself when you go out. Here we are again, weeping fears for breakfast. For a year after the violence, I was scared to leave the house. I carried mace, afraid of my own clumsy hands. Where did the I emerge? Frightened, housebound. What does isolation mean? Ice, location, danger from? Our hands are shut in prayers, our heart shut from fear, but we have to go out. Our words need air. To survive, sisters, we mean to speak. Thank you.